What up and welcome back to Mean Joe Video, where we celebrate the classics and lesser known gems. I'm Mean Joe Grizzly, your humble video store clerk and curator of the classics. And I am back after a little bit of a break, and I am returning to Crystal Lake to continue my Friday the 13th review series. And sitting here right here at the halfway point in the franchise, we are here to witness the return of the prodigal son. That's right, we have finally come to the entry where we officially get full-blown undead Jason Voorhees in all of his ghoulish glory. And I am of course talking about Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Part 6 is considered to be what some fans call a return to form and what a lot of fans consider the best of the franchise. But the question is, do I agree? Let's find out by dusting off that old VCR, popping it in the tape, and checking out Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Years ago, Tommy Jarvis killed infamous hockey mask-wearing murderer Jason Voorhees, and the trauma from that experience has landed him in and out of mental institutions and halfway houses. So to end his torment and achieve some level of closure, Tommy escapes from the mental hospital and heads to a graveyard where Jason is buried, with the intention of digging up and cremating Jason's remains. But after he digs up the body, a sudden storm sets in, and with the freak lightning strike, Jason is resurrected from the dead, and the terror begins once again. So although it grossed $21.9 million on a mere $2.2 million budget, the poor reception of A New Beginning from general audiences and fans alike led to the top brass at Paramount to issue a direct order to producer Frank Mancuso Jr. And that was get the Friday the 13th franchise back on track and bring back Jason. So he decided that Return of Jason had to be this grand event. And after seeing the horror film One Dark Night, he decided to hire the director of that film, Tom McLoughlin. Tom McLoughlin was an up-and-coming writer and director, and just like most people in the film scene at the time, he had felt like the franchise had completely ran out of steam, and not just the franchise, but the slasher genre in general. And he was real hesitant to take the job, but he saw it as a challenge, so he went ahead and took the job anyway. And after accepting the job, he went to the Paramount Studios, he sat in a screening room, and he watched every single film that had been released at that point all in a row. And after watching all the films, he said, what hasn't been done yet? And that was when he decided to ignore the ending of the last film that set up Tommy Jarvis as the new main antagonist of the franchise, and instead inject his love for Universal monsters and gothic horror into his Friday the 13th movie. And although he was ignoring the ending of A New Beginning, he still wanted to use Tommy Jarvis, Pam, and Reggie to a degree. But the actor who played Tommy Jarvis, John Shepard, decided to not return, and with that, actress Melanie Kinnaman and Shavir Ross also opted out. So their characters were forgotten, and Tommy was recasted, this time with Return of the Living Dead's Tom Matthews taking on the role. And then the rest of the cast will be assembled, including C.J. Graham playing the newly resurrected Jason Voorhees. He would then hire Real EFX to do the special effects, with Martin Becker as the special effects lead. Along with Becker will be Gabriel Batarlos, who would contribute a lot to designing the new mask, and Brian Wade, who was mostly responsible for recreating the makeup effects of the old look of Jason, but in a more decayed form, like recreating the old wounds and putting on prosthetics and stuff to make it look like a truly decayed Jason, but with all the recognizable marks of all the wounds that he has received over the franchise. So with the cast and crew gathered, Tom McLoughlin handling writing duties and sitting in the director's chair, and armed with a $3 million budget, they would begin filming in Covington, Georgia in March of 1986, and filming would wrap at the end of April of 1986. The movie would then be released in August later that year. And just like I mentioned at the beginning of this review series, I first saw this film on the Halloween special on Monster Vision, where Joe Bob Briggs showed a Dusk Till Dawn marathon of 5 of the first 6 Friday the 13th movies. And just like with Part 3, this one became one of my favorites. And although I've made it quite clear what my favorite in the franchise is so far, with that being Friday the 13th, the final chapter, Part 6, Jason Lives, is right next in line. As I mentioned before, the cast throughout this franchise definitely waxes and wanes, with the standouts being 2, 3, and especially Part 4. But since Part 4, we are reaching that point in the franchise where there is just really good or decent individual performances and a lot of forgettable performances that are really just there to be fodder for Jason's bloodbath. But Jason Lives does have a few memorable and good performances from our core group of characters. You have Tom Matthews as Tommy Jarvis, and he is absolutely great. In fact, I think that he is so good in this movie that he is just as synonymous with the character as Corey Feldman is with the younger version of Tommy Jarvis. His version of Tommy is a version of Tommy that has lived almost his entire life with this trauma, with this haunting memory of the night that Jason not only killed his mother, but mutilated everybody in his vicinity, and he was forced to do something that he ultimately did not want to do. He did not want to become a killer. He didn't want to have this life where he would have this trauma just barreling down on him at all times, making his life essentially a living hell. And he is reached a point as that character to where he is ready to put that trauma to bed and to finally find closure. And although it's not the best way to find closure, he decides that the only way that he can actually find that closure is to go to Jason's grave, dig it up, and cremate the remains to make sure that Jason is truly dead once and for all. And this event of him cremating Jason and having that closure leads to him having a triggering traumatic response to where he goes into a fit of rage, tears off a fence post from this big, large iron cemetery fence, and stabbing the corpse of Jason repeatedly in the chest with this iron rod. And little did he know that the moment that he did that, that set in motion Jason's resurrection, because a storm has been brewing the entire time in the background. This real spooky, lightning striking everywhere, rains about to come kind of atmosphere. And the moment he walks away to grab the gas can in order to cremate Jason's remains, a lightning bolt strikes the iron rod and brings Jason back from the dead. Jason would rise from the grave, take the life of Tommy's friend, and almost get Tommy as well. And Tommy would take off and run for help, while Jason would reach down into his grave, pick up the hockey mask that Tommy brought to be cremated with the body, redon his signature hockey mask, and the bloodbath would begin once again. Fortunately for Tommy, his crusade to find closure ends up being the direct way in which Jason is brought back to life, and he has once again brought terror and destruction back to this town of Crystal Lake. And although that was completely unintentional, Tommy now has a new motivation, and that is to finish off Jason once and for all and undo the mistake that he has done. And as I say once again, Tom Matthews is great. He is the first horror celebrity that I ever met, and when I tell you, he is one of the nicest guys you could ever meet, and he was so genuine, and he willingly did an intro for my podcast at the time. Before this was a YouTube channel, there was a podcast where I reviewed movies, and he did the intro to my podcast.
Hey, it's Tom Matthews from Return of the Living Dead and Friday the 13th, Part 6, to name a few, and you're listening to the Bean Joe Grizzly podcast. Enjoy.
And that is something that I am going to forever be thankful for, because he was, like I said, the first celebrity to do something like that for me. Just a really genuinely good dude. And he's no stranger to horror either. He done Return of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead 2, and he is great in both of those movies. And I highly recommend you check those out. And he continues to be part of the franchise, even though it's unofficial, in the fan-made film series Never Hike Alone by Vincent DeSante. And those are some films that are, although they're fan films, they are really well done. And I might cover those, depending on if I have time to. Maybe it'll be something that I'll do for like another Friday the 13th special on the actual day of Friday the 13th. But those movies are pretty good, and he reprises his role as Tommy Jarvis, and he's great in that as well. You have Jennifer Cook as Megan Garris. She is the daughter of Sheriff Garris, and she serves as the love interest for Tommy and the final girl of this movie. And she is a multifaceted final girl where she kind of has this sassy, bossy little like 1940s, 1950s style woman like aesthetic to her that makes her really likable, and she just comes off as one of the better final girls in this franchise. She might not be the best, but she's definitely in the top half, and she has no issues with throwing herself in harm's way to try to help stop Jason. Whereas there's an example where in the finale where they're at Camp Crystal Lake or Camp Forest Green, she hears all the children screaming and she immediately runs into danger to try to save these kids. And there's also other moments where she breaks Tommy out of jail multiple times and she drives the getaway car and she can drive her ass off, and it just makes her this really cool badass character that you really think complements Tommy very well. Then you have David Keegan as Sheriff Mike Garris, and he is great as the take no shit, iron will authority figure that is just tired of everybody's shit, and right off the bat he does not like Tommy at all, and he is completely justified in how he feels and in how he is dismissing all of Tommy's claims, because it would be crazy if some kid that has a tie to Jason Voorhees running into this police station screaming that Jason has risen from the dead. It is very justifiable that he doesn't believe him. So he comes off as this ass, but he's also trying to maintain order and trying to establish that this kind of stuff isn't real, even though to his surprise, it's definitely real. And more importantly, when the truth finally comes out and he sees that Jason has truly risen from the grave, he sets out to stop him. He doesn't hesitate at all, goes straight in and takes action. And there's even a point before his untimely death that he actually gives Jason the business. When he sees that Jason is going after his daughter, whom he is very protective of, and like every good father he should be, he gives Jason the business, man. He smacks him around, he crushes his head with a rock, and even though it doesn't work, it was a valiant effort. And he is named after horror director Mick Garrison. I thought that was a really cool nod from one director to another. And you'll see that throughout this movie, that there's a lot of nods to other horror legends as well. Then you have Vincent Goose Ferrero, who plays Deputy Rick, a Barney Fife-esque deputy who makes the cut because of one line. And he has this revolver, and he just got his new red dot scope in, and he gets to a point where he has to draw on Tommy, and when he draws on Tommy has the laser pointer right between his eyes, and he makes that iconic line that's one of the greatest lines in the franchise: "Wherever the red dot goes, you bang." And I don't know if it was intentional for him to say "you bang" or if it was something that he improvised, but nevertheless, it's so stupid that it's great. And then you have CJ Graham, who plays the newly resurrected Jason. And he didn't start out the stuntman. They had another guy that was in there who did like the daytime shots of Jason, and the rest is CJ, but he is the first actor to portray Jason when Jason is fully zombified. And also, he is big as hell. I think he is 6'3", 250 at the time. So he definitely brought the big, imposing, intimidating element to Jason. And I think he is one of the best Jasons that we have ever gotten. He's no Ted White, but I still think he is a great Jason. And on top of being a big, intimidating version of the character, he is completely unstoppable. Like, you can unload bullets into this guy, you could smash his head with a rock, you could do whatever you want to do to him, and he is just going to keep coming. And this might be the most resourceful version of Jason that we have gotten to date, where he uses a variety of tools, where it be tent stakes, where it be just regular knives, the environment around him, a fence post, or his trusty machete, or even his bare hands. he uses a variety of tools to kill his victims in this movie. And Jason has always been the one who's very creative in the way he kills his victims, but I feel like this one just added a different variety of different ways as far as the tools go in which he could kill his victims. But with that, there is a negative, because they actually give Jason gloves and a tool belt in this movie, and that was one part of the design that I did not like whatsoever. And I guess they kind of explain it away that he is decayed and his fingers are mainly bones now or whatnot, but to me it just looks really goofy, and that's like my one negative about this Jason. The tool belt and the gloves, they're just stupid. They look silly as hell. And his look when he is first resurrected, even though it's obscured by darkness and shadow, it looks awesome. It's very, very similar to the designs that Tom Savini did in the final chapter, only it's like the skin is looser, the body is slimmer, and the kind of like because all the moisture and stuff in the body has been dehydrated by sitting in the ground for so long, it looks skeletal in a way, and it just looks freaking awesome. Even though you can't see the entire face, it's kind of obscured with cobwebs, and he has maggots all over his face and everything. I just thought that was a really cool, gnarly, spooky look for Jason. And then obviously he dons his hockey mask, and then it's back to business as usual. But probably the coolest thing about this version of Jason is how he is mentioned periodically throughout the movie before anybody even knows he's resurrected. He is treated like a urban legend, a local boogeyman. And I thought that was really cool to see that mythos being built in real time, where they have no idea he's been resurrected, but that figure in the history of their town is still very prominent. And as you all know, the MPAA had been tightening their grip on the franchise since the last film. They were really cracking down on the violence, so much so that they were okay with all of the TNA being overdone in the last film, as long as they didn't put a lot of violence in it. And that's something that was always strange to me, because they tightened their grip even more in this movie. Real Effects Incorporated was managed to give us some really solid kills in here, despite not having all those restraints from the MPAA, including one of my favorites, and it's bloodless, and that is the scene where he puts the one girl's face into the metal wall of the RV and it molds to her face. That is such a cool ass kill that, even though it is very cartoonish, I thought it was awesome. Just having the force to put somebody's face all the way through the metal and mold their face into that metal was just fucking cool to me. You got this one cop, when confronted with Jason, he gets his head crushed, and although it doesn't show the head really get crushed, the aftermath when Sheriff Garris finds his body and he has the blood coming out of his ears and like the brains coming out of his nose and stuff, I thought that was really cool. There's also another aftermath scene where the character of Megan is out looking for either a way out, like it's a car that's running, or some way to call for help. And she opens up the door of the police car, and there lays one of her friend's heads. That prosthetic head is pretty damn gnarly as well. As I said before, you got Sheriff Garris, who, the moment he finds out Jason is going after his daughter Megan, he jumps into action, tries to put the beat down on Jason, and he does a really good job. He's actually on top of Jason, smashing his face with this rock until Jason reaches up, grabs him by his shoulders, and literally folds him in half, completely in half. And it is freaking awesome. It's not bloody at all, but the sound design in that scene where you hear his back breaking and him getting folded up was freaking awesome. It's definitely, to me, probably the second best kill in the movie. Then you got Jason's death, where he is chained to the bottom of Crystal Lake with this rock, and he has seemingly drowned Tommy, and Megan is out in the lake trying to take Tommy to shore, and Jason reaches up and grabs Megan's leg, and in an act of desperation, she reaches up to the broken boat that Tommy was in and grabs a hold of the control arm of the boat propeller. And she turns on the boat and she just grinds Jason's head and face up with this boat propeller. And although it's not super graphic, there is a point where the blade hits the dummy head and the neck just snaps this way and it just looks gnarly as shit. And you have these chunks of flesh and bone that just start floating up to the surface. And that was pretty fucking cool. But for me, the highlight kill comes at the beginning of the movie, where the moment that Jason is resurrected, Tommy and his friend are set upon by Jason. Tommy's friend tries to get the jump on Jason and runs up behind him and hits him in the back of the head with this shovel. And unfortunately, all it does is get Jason's attention, because the next thing he does is turns around and punches through Tommy's friend's chest and rips out his heart. And that kill was so fucking cool. It's definitely the best kill of this movie. But to me, where the film truly shines is its aesthetic. And like I said before, McLaughlin wanted to make a slasher movie in the same concept and atmosphere and vein as the classic Universal monsters and gothic horror, and he absolutely achieves that in this movie, whether it be the graveyard setting where it just looks like this old Transylvanian type cemetery with the iron rods and the stone pillars and all that, or whether it's the dark and stormy night aspect of the movie that's throughout most of the movie, where there's lightning and potential rainfall, but also there are scenes in like the forest where the whole floor of the forest is fog. Stuff like that, to me, is what makes this movie the spookiest Friday the 13th entry, and I appreciated it so damn much. He even incorporates some really cool stuff into his dialogue and into the lore of the movie, where there's one point where Tommy calls the police station and Megan picks up the phone and he's telling her where he's at, and he calls out the name of the general store, and it's Karloff's General Store in a nod to Boris Karloff. And I thought that was pretty damn cool. And then another nod to the character of Frankenstein's monster is the means in which Jason is resurrected when lightning strikes the fence rod that is protruding out of Jason's chest and brings him back to life. That life by lightning is something that was definitely a nod to Frankenstein, and I thought was pretty damn cool. McLaughlin even incorporated old school vampiric lore too, where the only way to permanently kill Jason is to take him back to the place where he first died, which is Crystal Lake, and kill him there. That is the only way to truly vanquish the monster. And I thought that was also really cool, even though it doesn't work. There are even some nods to modern horror directors at the time, like they had a Cunningham Road, or there was a town next door called Carpenter. Thought that was pretty cool. And there's one that's kind of loosely there, and McLaughlin has since debunked this, but there's a little girl named Nancy there who continuously has dreams about a monster coming to kill her. And that, to most fans, would be a nod to Nightmare on Elm Street. But McLaughlin has since said that he modeled that character after his own daughter, who had a problem with night terrors and stuff. But nevertheless, even though it might be headcanon, it's pretty damn cool. And to go along with that aesthetic and that atmosphere that McLaughlin was trying to make by giving us this more gothic outlook and concept, Harry Manfredini's score reflects that as well. He took those same gothic elements from all of those older black and white horror films and incorporated them into the base of that classic Friday the 13th theme. And it 100% makes the atmosphere of this movie even spookier. It is something that I've been saying this entire time, that the way that Harry Manfredini evolves with each entry up to this point has been spectacular. I feel like that he has done nothing but try to build upon what he was trying to do. Sure, some of the scores are better than others, but this one, the gothic tones and sounds that he is going for in this movie, absolutely work. And pair that with McLaughlin's aesthetic, spookiest Friday the 13th thus far. And then you have Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper, man, I love Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper contributes a song to the movie, He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask, and it is pretty much the unofficial anthem of the franchise. Kind of like how Dawkins' Dream Warriors is the unofficial anthem of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And it is an absolute banger. But alongside He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask, he also contributes his song Teenage Frankenstein and Hard Rock Summer as well. And both of those are also certified bangers. And to go along with the aesthetic and the soundtrack and all of the spooky aspects of the movie, there are some really cool shots in this movie, and a couple of them are some of the best of the franchise. There's this one shot where Jason confronts these two camp counselors that are on their way to Camp Crystal Lake, and they're in this Volkswagen Bug, and he shows up in front of the Bug, and he won't move, and they tried to like scare him by running him over, and then the boyfriend gets out, pulls a gun, Jason kills him with this fence post that he's now using as a spear, and in reaction to that, the girl starts screaming, and Jason shoves the spear through the windshield of the Bug, and it's like coming at the camera, and it would have been a kick-ass 3D shot, but this movie wasn't filmed in 3D, but nevertheless, it's still a badass shot. And that shot was almost deadly because the actress who is playing the girl in the Volkswagen Bug is the wife of Tom McLaughlin, and she was almost impaled by this fence spear because the trajectory of the spear changed once it went through the windshield, and it almost went slap through it, barely missed her. So that was a cool little fact of something that could have went wrong on the set, but thankfully it didn't. I absolutely love the scene with the fence rod protruding out of Jason's chest and lightning striking it twice to bring him back to life. That scene of the lightning striking and the rod glowing with that electrical energy was so fucking badass. The corpse with its mouth open in the bottom of the casket, man, I thought that was so fucking cool. I loved that shot. But probably the best shot in the entire movie is the moment that Jason is on this RV. It's following him putting the victim's face into the wall and molding her face into the metal of the RV. He kills the driver by sticking a knife in his head, and the RV flips, and it is a spectacular stunt where the RV just flips and hits on its side and slides all the way across the pavement, and the RV is on fire, it's on its side, and Jason bursts out of the top, kicking open the side door, which is now the top of the RV, and standing upon the RV while it is on fire. That shot is definitely the best shot in this movie and one of the best of the franchise. Just like with all Friday the 13th movies, the title card, the title sequence is very unique. This time, it's kind of goofy, but I kind of like it. There is a moment when Jason dons his hockey mask and he turns around towards the camera, and the camera does a bunch of jump cuts until it zooms in right on Jason's one eye. The pupil dilates, and Jason walks out, turns and faces the audience, and he slashes through the eyeball, and blood starts squirting out towards the screen, and the title comes up, Jason Lives. And then another slash under it, and blood spews out, and it says Friday the 13th Part 6. And I love this title. I do think that the James Bond thing, because that's what it is, it's a tribute to James Bond, where, you know, in 007 movies, there's always this like barrel of the gun that you're kind of looking down the barrel of this gun, and 007 comes into frame, turns and shoots, and then blood follows down the screen. It's the same concept as that, only with Jason, and I thought that it's goofy as shit, but I also thought it was cool, and it kind of sets the tone for the movie, knowing that you're going to have fun with this entry. This entry is going to be awesome. There are a lot of meta moments in this movie where the movie is very self-aware of stuff. There's like movie within a movie stuff in here, as far as like the commentary on incorporating like the Universal Monsters lore and stuff like that. And even the way that Jason is portrayed as this urban legend. But there's even like some fourth wall breaking here with the Gravedigger character where he breaks the fourth wall twice. And although that does not work for me all the time, particularly in this movie, as far as the fourth wall breaking and some of the lower meta stuff, I do think that that is a groundbreaking thing for the horror franchise and movies in general. I don't remember a movie before this one ever being meta. And it kind of is a testament to the legacy of the film, because if this wasn't the first meta film, it was definitely the most influential, because this directly influenced Kevin Williamson when he was developing Scream. And I thought that that was a really cool fact there, that if without this movie, we would not have had Scream and its meta commentary. And the humor, unfortunately, didn't always hit for me. One in particular was the fourth wall breaking by the Gravedigger. Although I see its significance and I see how it was very influential, it was very silly to me, especially the one where he looks at the camera and is like, does he think I'm a fart head? I just don't think it's funny, and I think it's kind of silly. So it didn't always hit for me. And then we get to the ending of the film where we have the final showdown between Tommy and Jason, where Jason has descended upon Camp Crystal Lake. He's killed all the cops there. He is about to kill all the kids and Megan, and he is lured away by Tommy, who is out in the middle of the lake in this boat with a boulder that has a huge heavy chain on it, waiting on Jason to come out so he could trap him at the bottom of Crystal Lake. And the way he gets Jason's attention is by calling him an asshole and calling him a pussy. And it's one of the funniest shits ever. That's the part of the humor that worked for me, when Tommy's out there in the middle of that boat and he's just talking shit to Jason and he calls him a pussy. And,
hey, asshole! It's me, you won't remember? Come on! Come on, chicken shit! Come on, I'm standing here waiting! Come on, you pussy!
and that's what gets Jason's attention. Is fucking hilarious to me. So Jason goes out into the water, and as he's walking into the water, he's slowly disappearing as the depth of the lake starts to engulf him. And it becomes this like cat and mouse thing where he's jumping up and out of the water at Tommy, trying to pull Tommy in. Tommy takes gas, he pours it all around his boat and lights it on fire to kind of trap Jason in this ring of fire. And the moment that Jason gets a good jump and gets into the boat, Tommy puts the chain around his neck and Jason goes underwater again. Then Jason jumps up again and the boat splits in half under the weight of Tommy, Jason, and this big boulder that he has. The boulder floats to the bottom of the lake, trapping Jason. Jason is seemingly drowning. He grabs Tommy and he supposedly drowns Tommy. Megan, in a frenzy, runs out into the lake, jumps in, swims out, gets Tommy, but she's grabbed by Jason. And in a fit of desperation, she reaches up to the control arm of the boat motor, and she turns it on, and she grinds Jason's face and head up with the boat propeller, seemingly killing Jason. Now, she would drag Tommy's body back to the shore. She would do CPR. She would revive him, and everything seems to be great. The monster is vanquished. The day's saved. Cut to the next day. Shows Crystal Lake in the daytime. Right off the dock is where Jason's body is allegedly floating chained to this boulder, and it goes to a close-up of his face underwater, and the eyes open, and Jason is still alive. Then Alice Cooper kicks in, and the man behind the mask starts playing, and it's fucking awesome. But I thought the ending was pretty fitting, and I thought it was a good way to leave things open. However, the original ending to this movie that Tom McLaughlin wanted to do was fucking awesome. So what Tom McLaughlin wanted to do in his original ending was he wanted to kill Jason the same way that he killed him, but this time take his body and put it back in the cemetery, because the Gravedigger character was never supposed to die. That was something that was put back in there by order of the executives because they needed to pad the body count. And in Tom's original ending, the Gravedigger's sitting there. He just got done burying Jason again. And a mysterious stranger walks up and kind of hands this Gravedigger money and tells him to continue doing what he can do to keep his son safe. And that is when we are revealed that the man is Jason's father, and I believe his name was Elias Voorhees, and then the movie is supposed to cut. And I thought that that was so fucking cool and could have possibly been badass, but the executives didn't like it, so it was cut out. And I could see how it could meddle the lore a little bit and make things a little overcomplicated, but man, I feel like the franchise needed a little bit of complication. It needed to have a thicker lore than what it actually had, and that would have been a really cool thing, but it's unfortunately the executives didn't like that idea. So Jason Lives was released August 1st, 1986, and on a $3 million budget, it grossed $6.7 million in its opening weekend and was ranked number 2 at the box office behind James Cameron's hit Aliens. Pretty good excuse to be number 2 if you're going up against the greatest sequel of all time, or one of the greatest sequels of all time. It went on to gross $19.4 million and was among the top earners at the box office that year. But unfortunately, it was also the lowest grossing film in the franchise so far. And what was even crazier is the critics were actually pretty positive on this one. They wasn't harsh at all. I mean, there were still the ones that's like, this is brain dead, blood and guts and but most of the usual suspects that are talking shit about the franchise were actually like, this entry's pretty cool. It's got that gothic aspect and it's got a lot of humor in it. And that's pretty surprising considering it was the lowest grossing one. But Jason Lives is a fan favorite and definitely my second favorite Friday the 13th movie, right behind the final chapter. And that line is very close, I want to add. I love this movie. It's definitely running a real tight race with the final chapter. And unfortunately, it is the last great sequel in the franchise because it is all downhill from here, guys. But if you like gothic horror and a spooky atmosphere draped over your slashers, Friday the 13th Part 6 Jason Lives is definitely the entry for you. So with all that, I'm giving Jason Lives a 4.5 out of 5. So make sure on your way out you grab you a copy of Friday the 13th Part 6 Jason Lives. And if you like this video, like it. And if you like it enough, please head over to the channel, hit the subscribe and bell button so you never miss a new release. Also, please follow me on all social media platforms so you can get channel updates, movie news, and all forms of badassery. Coming up next in the franchise is where we get 2 horror icons facing off against each other with Carrie versus Jason. Sorta. We got Friday the 13th, The New Blood. So stay tuned for that, and remember, be kind, rewind.